Well, I have to go a step back. The whatever we do in our building is with the thought in mind of a laboratory. We have two words in our mission statement, laboratory and sanctuary. So whatever we do is exploratory in one way or another. That's one layer of the answer. There are various, I give you them in alphabetic order, so to speak. The second one is, given our urban context, if you look around us, most of the living population has abandoned this neighborhood, and then you have towards the north, you have in parts struggling neighborhoods, and towards the south it's more stabilized. So if you show old masters in such a context, you can't just say we're showing old masters like the National Gallery in Washington would, or I don't know, the museums in Berlin or in Dresden would. You have to think differently. And we were thinking about on various from various angles. One is the concept of this exhibition, which is very much based not on an art historical narration, but on the personal experience of a legacy that, particularly on this side of the Atlantic, seems to be a show value, yes, but very much removed from all of us. So it was about the personal experience. And then, given this urban context, we wanted to make this personal experience accessible, and not just accessible in a one-way way, but also invigorated by programs where we looked at populations that we would like to attract anyway to the Pulitzer. So a little bit more than a year ago, the Pulitzer Foundation for the Arts and the George Warren Brown School for Social Work at Washington University co-appointed a social worker who, in close collaboration with our art historical team, comes up with programs to reach a population that is different from mainstream museum population. And at one point, Lisa came to me when we were thinking about the conceptual issues of the Old Master presentation, and she said that she had two specific publics in mind. One was Alzheimer's Association, which is a very interesting effect where art viewing is concerned, because Alzheimer's is about the loss of short-term memory and then the gradual loss of long-term memory. And art viewing is about short and long-term memory. And the other population she had in mind was so-called ex-offenders. And she had been in touch with an institution or with a non-for-profit called Employment Connection here in St. Louis that has as its mission the placement of ex-offenders and homeless. And so we thought, what could work? And very quickly, because Lisa Haber-Chang, this social worker on our staff, and we had gone to see some of the performances of Agnes Wilcox. And very quickly the idea of theater performances came up. But in our case, the theater performance should rather be something not that is interpreted from another existing text, but rather a text that the actors write themselves and thereby interpret old masters and build a bridge to what is buried in old masters. And then when you go to this, we don't have the habit anymore when we look at old masters to think about these incredibly raw stories that are told. I mean, there is torture going on all the time. There is redemption going on. There is betrayal going on. I mean, all these raw things that if you are in a sheltered bourgeois context, you might only get some digestible surface. But if you are exposed to this due to not being sheltered socially and otherwise, there is a big connection there. And that was another reason to think they should write actually these bridges and enact them. And what happens in that case is that you are a couple of steps removed from what happens in prison performing arts, because in prison performing arts you have the universe, not chosen obviously, but the universe of the offenders, and people visit them there, and you have as a visitor theater that is normally played in another one, so you have the displacement of theater. In our case, you have a universe that is seemingly accessible to the privileged, in quotes, and those who are not necessarily part of that world, at least in public perception, are as much guests as our visitors here. They are on the same level, but they are the ones who build the bridge. So that was our rationale behind it, and it fell into place very organically. Surprised, I'm not sure whether I would use that word, because I didn't have any expectations in that sense. I can only use the word, yeah, maybe I was surprised that it would move me so much, and if it had only moved me for my own delectation, I would still have been moved, but would have had a bad conscience. There was something else that happened that went way beyond the realm of art history and aesthetics. Aesthetics was both a vehicle and a destiny, and I was surprised, a vehicle for something else, like social inclusion and reinsertion, hopefully, that we don't know yet. And so I was surprised by the intensity of the experience and the intensity that I think, because I attended all the performances so far, that I think everybody shared was there. Yeah, I think I would like to speak a little bit, I mean, we thought very, very much about what we hoped to be able to do for the actors and via the actors for the community. But if you think you're giving, because we don't know how much we are giving, and there's a narcissistic satisfaction when you say, I'm giving this, I'm giving that, you also have to think of what you are getting. If what we hope is going to happen is happening with the actors, they will have a more easy way into the working process. We don't know it yet because they still are not employed. So that's one thing we hopefully will be able to give them in the sense of facilitation. We also hope that we could give to a very diversified public an intense experience of what art can be about and what the old masters are definitely about. So now what comes in return? And I think what comes in return, you have the anecdotal personal being touched, moved, and so on, and I think all our staff very intensely experience this building up to the performances and the performances themselves. But beyond that, there's an institutional gain. I think it shows us new ways of thinking about art. It makes the Pulitzer and our thought process about this institution a very fruitful place about thinking about experiences rather than a separation of the experience and our dealing with art. You cannot separate this. It's an art historical fiction that it's just the prose of catalogues that does that. And on the other hand, if you are dictating what people should think, you get also onto sterile ground. If you're doing it in a clumsy way, you make it boring. And we're withdrawing all this, and now we're dealing with almost raw experience, and that will really lead us the way in our thought process for the future. So that's what the institution gets out of it.